So Anam aloha everyone. Hopefully you can see me. It looks like I'm on here. If you could put your name and where you're logging in from and then your details if you want to. And let me just check here for so I can see my comments. Oh, great. Okay, good. We've got some people here. Okay. Great. Okay. Yes, Pluto retrograde. And we got a reflector on here too, I know for sure. Okay. So, let's talk about this. So, how was your week? How's your week been? My week's been really strange. You know, we're in the middle of the eclipses. On May 5th is the lunar eclipse that I did a video on, my last video. And I've been breaking glasses, not been sleeping well. Up every morning at 3 a.m. to do my meditation and my sadhana practice, and then breaking glasses, which means breaking illusions. So maybe you've been experiencing weird phenomenon too. You can write that down if you want to, which is really not my typical self at all. I'm pretty grounded, right, as a stellium in Taurus. Okay. So let's get so this is the chart as of like a couple minutes ago that I did, the just now chart. You can see that 360 is still activated. That's the channel of mutation in the transit chart. And so you can see that Jupiter's activating that. Jupiter is in the 3. If you could see the glyph for Jupiter, 3.1, and then 60. Right? And that goes until May. I think May 14th, Jupiter moves out of the 3, and then it moves into the next hexagram. It's going to be in Taurus. And then Pluto is in the 60, and that's what I wanted to talk about today. And Pluto is very, very important in your chart. Right? It represents the soul. Okay, there we go. I have a neighbor that's very affected by the energy, so she's been acting up lately. Okay, so Pluto retrograde, right? So that went retrograde. Pluto went retrograde on May 1st, and it's retrograde until October 10th of this year. And you know that I work with the tarot, so this wasn't a randomly picked tarot card. This is actually related to the first 10 degrees of Aquarius, right? The 5 of Swords. I talked about this in another video. And then you've got rulers within those they're called decans. You know, every zodiac sign is 30 degrees, and then it can be divided into 0, 10, 10, 20, 20, 30. Well, Uranus rules that, right? Uranus rules the first 10 degrees decan of Aquarius. Okay, so that's conflict. The 5 of Swords is conflict. So we're in a very mutative time right now. And I've been talking to some people that I know and waking up in the morning and feeling disoriented, or feeling like you've shifted so much, even though the external really isn't showing that. It's like these profound internal changes, right? So ways of thinking can change, just ways of being in the world can change, even though the external's not really reflecting that back yet, right? Because the external takes time to catch up, because it's time and space, right? So it takes time to catch up to your internal changes. So this is this global transit, right? This channel of mutation. This is about us en masse changing and switching in our own way, right? Transforming. So here we have the 5 of Swords. So this gives us more information about Pluto going retrograde. And so this represents conflict and you can't see here, but he's got a smirk on his face, like he won, right? He won, I won. This is so the ego. So this represents conflict, competition, mind games, right? Self-sabotage. It's the sword, so it's all mental. So some questions to ask yourself from May until October, because this is going to affect us all when a planet, like with the potency of Pluto goes retrograde. It's about going inward, right? So some questions to ask yourself: do I have self-defeating, undermining thoughts, right? Can I avoid conflict with others? And these thoughts can be, I'm going to go deeper into this, but you're faced with a challenge in your life, and then right away the ego's in your ear. You can't do this, right? You're not qualified enough. And then listing all the things that can go wrong, right? These kinds of thoughts that undermine you and kind of freeze you in your tracks, analysis paralysis, getting too much in the head, and then not taking action. Can you avoid conflict with others? Now, this is Pluto retrograde, so it's about going inward. I'm all about the individual, right? Your unique self. Well, if you're having conflict with other people in your life, it's really about a conflict inside you that you're acting out on the external world. So if you're in a conflict with somebody now, a partner, is usually someone really close to you. What does that person represent in you that you're not? This is Shadow 101, right? What does that person represent in me that I'm in conflict with inside? And I need to play it out here on the external, right? Because it's an aspect of you that you're not willing to own, right? So this is the easy way. It's like bring it back to yourself, and then you don't got to play it out and create drama and right, needless karma with other people. You can just like, oh, this is a conflict in me. It has nothing to do with that other person. They're just a mere reflection, right? What part of myself am I fighting with? So we're in this energy of this conflict inside of us, this tension, and I'm going to get into this. So it's really about facing the enemy within, and that's the shadow. There's no enemies outside you. They're all inside you, right? So you're here to integrate those. So with the Pluto and Pluto retrograde, it's the dark night of the soul. I talk about this a lot, right? If you're on the spiritual journey, you've probably been through a few already. It's not just one, right? And the dark night of the soul is when you go dark, right? You go dark, right? Everything is kind of falling apart in the external world, and it's calling you to go inside and face your fears, right? It's about facing your shadow, facing your fears. It's about putting your faith in the divine. That's the dark night of the soul. It's our test, right? We all have to go through it. So Pluto in retrograde is saying to transcend the shadow. Pluto rules Scorpio, right? The modern ruler of Scorpio. That's the shadow. Transcend the shadow. Past life memories. I talked about that in the last video, are coming up. Face those. And their memories are fears, right? Remember what I said, they're undigested experiences. That's what memories are. And that indigestion can follow us right into like this lifetime from past lives. And they need to be digested. They need to be integrated, these past life memories. They can come through deep emotions, even having pictures and things like that come up. We can play it out on the external. Watch that last video if you want to learn more. And then this is real transformation happens. Pluto wants you to transform during this time. Now with Pluto, we need to remember there's a duality. Remember, we live in a plane of duality. Well, Pluto shows deep duality. Pluto represents desire and power, right? So this time that we're in right now, it's about reclaiming our power as an individual, right? It starts with the individual. It doesn't start off with the collective. Oh, the collective is going to do all the work. People all out there, they're going to claim their power. They're going to stand up and take their power back. And then I'm just going to ride on their coattails. No, it has to start with you as an individual to claim your power, to take your power back, which is to realize yourself as an eternal soul, right? And your eternal self. So Pluto's power, desire, but it works in a dualistic way. So this is the soul. In evolutionary astrology, Pluto represents the soul. So the souls either go in two ways, right? It's about desire. The reason why you even exist in a body on this planet right now is just from desire. It's the soul's desire to incarnate during this time and space for a purpose, right? A higher purpose. So the two desires of the soul here are to go into the material world. Run away from the light, right? Run away from the soul. Or the soul can't run away from itself, but basically to delve into the material world and go into experience, right? Human experiences. It's about going into the darkness, right? The darkness, and this is the darkness here means the ignorance of the ego, right? So it's just going, wallowing in the material world. I'm just this body, I'm just this mind, I'm these five senses. That's the ignorance of the ego. Right? You're ignorant of your true self, right? And then it gets to the point where Pluto is like, okay, I'm done with this. I've had all the human experiences that I need in this lifetime, maybe in all my lifetimes. Now it's to come back, right? And it's to go, but the desire is to go back inside, into the inner world, back to the light, back to source, back to the infinite, back to the eternal self. This isn't little s self ego. This is big S self, right? So Pluto retrograde is all about going inside, right? And the reason why we don't want to go inside is because we have to face what's in there, right? What's in there, what we've been avoiding. Maybe you haven't been doing your shadow work, right? Maybe you're new to it, fairly new to it. This is why people don't want to go inside, because they know in a deep level of the work that they have to do, right? And to face shadow is to face your deepest fears, right? So you go inside and it feels claustrophobic in there, you know? There's constriction, there's tension, and there's these emotions that don't feel good. There's these fears that don't feel good, right? But it has to be done, and it can only be done by you. It can't be done by anybody else. You can't be giving it over to some guru or a master. Here, you do it for me. They give it to another entity. No, you have to do it. You have to transcend it. And remember, you're doing this for all your past lives and your ancestors and your fractal line, right? So it can be really intense. So keep this in mind. And where the deepest work for you is to look at your natal chart and then look at where it's falling in which house, right? This is what I talked about in the Soul Purpose webinar series that I did, right? Going house by house, what it means for you. And that's the work that you have to do. So it's very specific, but we're talking general here. So let's go to this shadow. I didn't put it down here, did I? The 60 is the shadow of limitation, right? Every gate, hexagram gene key, has a shadow, right? So the shadow is limitation, and it's the gift of realism, and this is the city of justice. The city of justice, okay? So the shadow. So limitless. Right? Deep down, we all know that we're limitless. We know this at a deep level. But what the ego does, this is the ego in my world, I'm just giving it a form, right? The voice in your head that you believe is you, this is what you identify with, right? So limitless to the ego's version of limitless is always with the ego. The ego's got to tag along, that I'm limitless, right? I'm powerful. And what is the ego's version of limitless? Is I have special powers. I have power to control all my circumstances. I have full control, and I have control over other people. So I don't suffer, right? This is the ego's version. I don't suffer. I get whatever I want when I want it. And it's all about manifesting material power, right? If it's any kind of spiritual power, then it's power over, right? It's having special, I can disappear. I can manifest money whenever I want, right? This is the ego's version of limitless. But the truth is, is that the ego equals limitation. You're in the shadow of limitation when you identify with your ego, right? That's how it works. So the truth is ego is limitation. So what are the limitations here when you're in ego? Well, immediately you're in time, right? When you identify with your ego, you're in time, and time is limited, right? There's a beginning and there's an end. And you can feel the limitation of time when you have to, right? You're stressed and you have to get something done and you're totally in your ego. You got to get this done, right? You're in traffic and this is going to happen and that's going to happen. It's a limitation. It's a limitation of time and space. Then beliefs, right? Listening to the ego and having certain beliefs about yourself that you believe are true, like the belief that I'm just this body, I'm just this physical body, I'm just this mind in my five senses and no more. You can be limited by expectations. Again, listening to this ego, then I have expectations for my life and I'm disappointed over and over and over and over again because it's not being fulfilled. These expectations aren't being fulfilled. People aren't fulfilling my expectations. I have projections. The ego is projecting something out. They're not being fulfilled, right? I'm chasing this projection that my ego has projected out in the external world. It's not reality, right? That's a limitation. Your perspective is limited. You're only seeing through the ego's eyes, right? Very limited if you look at all of this. And then this closes you off to magic. It closes you off to grace, closes you off to creativity, right? You're not going to have any of this with the ego. The ego likes to create, wants this, but it can't have it it can't have it as the ego. You can't have this as the ego. So it's about the eternal self, right? This is limited too, right? I can't get a picture to describe what the eternal self is. It's vast. That's what I'm trying to describe here. It's vast, right? And it's not here, right? So when you fall into your ego, you become very, very limited in relation to your eternal self. So the eternal self is without limit, and it's more vast than the ego, the mind, and the body, right? Your eternal self, because a lot of spiritual teachers say, well, the eternal self is really inside. Well, it even goes deeper than that. It goes farther back than that. Your body is actually just a product of consciousness, right? Your eternal self. So your body is part of this space. That's what I would describe it as, like space, right? Your eternal self is space. And this means you're in the state of oneness. You're in that connection, right? Also more limitation is you feel separate. You feel separate from creation. You feel separate from the divine. You feel separate from humanity, right? So I also wrote quick notes here is other examples of limitations, just to get you twigging, right? Get you the light bulbs going off. Oh, this is how my ego limits me. Having doubts, right? Having doubts, especially about the future, doubts about yourself, right? I can't handle this. I don't think I can handle this challenge in my life, right? Doubts that even the divine even exists, like things like that. Doubts about other people, right? Worries, right? That's another way you limit yourself. Limitation is staying in this ego self, right? Believing that this is you. Lack of faith, having a lack of faith in the divine. Remember, the dark night of the soul is all about faith. That's your magic pill here is faith, is to have faith in the divine. That's the test, right? The dark night of the soul is the test, this big spiritual test that we all have to go on, and it's all about faith. Do you have faith or not? What are you going to choose? Are you going to choose this ego, or are you going to choose your eternal self? What do you have faith in, right? Either or. And then the other thing is you become a victim of your mind and your ego. So giving all your authority, all your power over to that ego, right? Because the ego is powerless without you, right? The eternal self, This ego needs you. It needs your eternal self. Your eternal self is already here, right? It already exists. It's right here, right now, right? It needs you to power it, right? The ego's got to plug into you. So it's your belief in this ego, right? That this is me, this is my authority, that's all there is, right? So you become a victim of this ego. And you can see how ridiculous that is just with this picture, right? Believing everything that ego is generating, because this is the thinker, those thoughts in your head, right? This is the thinker, is the ego. And then the belief that you're just this body, mind, and senses. Getting caught up in perception, right, of the Maya, what's going on out in the world. Also giving your power over to the external, which is totally ruled by ego, right? Thinking that you're alone in the universe, that it's just you and the ego, right? I got to fend for myself. I have to do everything myself. I can't rely on anybody else. I can't rely on the divine. I've got to rely on this ego and mind. And then you're caught in past and future, right? And these are these projections. The ego's drawing from the past and I'm projecting out onto the future, right? So I'm like disappointed about the past. I'm depressed about the past, all the mistakes I made. Or I'm projecting that past into the future and it's creating anxiety for me. And then becoming a victim of your body. So that would be your health, right? Your health, your finances, money, relationship, right? This limits you or limits you. And that you're trapped by the Maya, the shadow of limitation. I'm trapped by the Maya. The powers are just too big here. And the Maya, again, giving your power over to the external, over to the ego. Right? And then how you really limit yourself is you refuse to see the truth of who you really are. Right? Because there's a deep fear of, because once you go into that, like you realize who you really are, that comes with responsibility, right? And it's the old saying, better to be with the devil you know than the one you don't, right? This fear of the unknown, the fear of the unknown. So this time with Pluto retrograde, it's really about going deep inside and seeing, just facing those fears that's hiding you from the truth, the capital T truth, right? So just a reminder, this was a slide I had in my last video, is, right, these past life memories are surfacing, right? So they're going to come up with fear, right? The shadow is the frequency of fear. It can be anger and grief, but it's fear. These are cellular memories, and they feel so real. So it's best to not create a story. Don't listen to the ego that's going to create a story about memories that are just releasing, right? The electromagnetic field of the earth is changing through these solar flares. The electromagnetic field of the earth holds the memories intact, our human memory, right? That's all starting to release. And these are our ancestral memories are starting to release. So as an individual, these will start to release. And most often they really come up through the emotions, right? They come up through the emotional body. So if you're feeling fear, like I say so many times, it's just a frequency, right? So there you are. You're not these emotions. You're much larger than the emotional body, right? So you allow the emotions to move through you. Imagine you're just space, right? Your eternal self is just space. That's all it is, right? High frequency space, your awareness. Well, you let the emotions move, right? So you let the fear move. You don't identify with it because the ego will want you to identify with the fear and then creates a story about it. And then you're running around trying to avoid, right? Trying to avoid these feelings, right? Because they're uncomfortable. So you can feel them without getting lost in them, right? And creating some kind of story or identity or running to addictions, listening to that ego, trying to avoid it. And you just let the frequency move through space, right? The space of who you are, right? So you're like, well, how do I get there? Well, meditation helps, right? To get you into this spaciousness. But first you got to face all what's inside there, right? And that's the shadow frequencies that we all have to face. Pluto's going to be dragging you in there, right? You're going to be pulled. Pluto, the archetype of Pluto is very, very powerful, right? Power, it represents power. So drawing you in to face these things that maybe you've been putting off, right? Now it's the time to do it. So those memories are releasing, okay? And just don't identify with them. It's just passing through, right? Bye, 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 right? Let them go. Let them move. They're not going to come back if you just let them without interfering by creating a story or trying to avoid feeling them, right? So you have to feel them. And then, like I said in the last video, if you're unconscious of this and you're not going within, you're refusing to go within, well, you're going to attract experiences on the external. Like, I don't mean to scare people, but things will start happening on the external, right? That's going to show you, like, let's use an example. You got a fender bender or something like that, right? Well, you don't go into blame and I got in an accident because that person did this and that. It's like, get the lesson, because right, life is communicating to you. And with an accident, it's, oh, this trajectory I've been on, life is saying stop, right? Or things aren't moving forward. I wanted to go on that trip and suddenly the flight got canceled and stuff. Well, that's the life is saying stop, to go within. So get those lessons, right? Without creating chaos in the external world, right? So that you're forced to stop, basically, right? So this is all about integration of these memories, especially within this eclipse season, right? So again, you may see images. Again, don't identify. Just let them move like a movie reel, right? Just let them move. This is your mind just processing the memories. That's all. And then with body sensations, again, you're not running to the doctor because you got a little pain today. I had some pain in my hip. Well, that's all about power. Hips represent power in your grandparents, right? It's just you let things move. Give it time. Give it space, right? Don't fight it. Don't fight it. And it's up and down. It's an up and down process. Okay. So really with Pluto, and I love the phoenix, right? Just the symbol of the phoenix and the story of the phoenix. This is one of the symbols of Scorpio, which Pluto rules, right? The eagle and the snake and the phoenix, right? So you get the snake shedding its skin, that's lower frequency Scorpio, and then the eagle. So you can see the higher vision, the elevated vision. But to get there, we have to go through this phoenix, right, process. And this is facing your shadow. It's facing your deepest fears. It's about going inside and transforming yourself from the ashes. That's your past, right? So it's really about letting go of our past now, right? In this lifetime and all of our other lifetimes, and just moving into the new. That you have no idea who you are, right? With this eternal self. So just remember that we're moving, Pluto wants us moving through this pathway of awareness, right? Moving from the physical, you can't see that, the physical plane, to the mental plane, the mind. This is a purification process, the emotional plane, and then back to frequency, back to vibration, right? Back to your eternal self. What else did I want to say about this? Is this making sense to people? I want to read some comments here. Okay. Okay, Satnam. Happy Chiron return, Phantom. World events, but have discovered human design. Yeah, because like I said before, the Maya is breaking down. It's dismantling. This ego is being neutered. So we're going to see the collapse. We're seeing it out in the external world. And there's no security out there. Like, don't listen to this ego and mind, like, oh, let's go back to normal and the way things used to be, and this is how it worked before. Yeah, everything is changing. This is your true security, is to go within. I remember when I first started having those experiences of going deep, deep within. It depends on your trigger. My trigger is when my body is having a clearing. Back in the day, I mean, I rarely get sick anymore. And I don't even call it sick. I call it a clearing. And it's so fast because I don't interfere. I just let it move through me. But when I started doing Kundalini Yoga teacher training, this is when it happened, because I'm a 5, right, a Taurus. So I've got lots of karma held in my body, and I was getting sick. We used to do a weekend a month, right, the whole weekend for the training. So it was bringing up stuff in my body to be cleared. All my karma was clearing through my body. And usually I'd be so triggered. And this time it's like I had to surrender, and I just went really deep, deep, deep within me. Right? Deeper than the body, deeper than the mind. And it was this. I was having the experience of the eternal self, and just like, oh, it's so peaceful here. I'm just letting the body just do its thing, right? It was like the ocean, the waves on the ocean and the turbulence, but deep, deep down in the bottom of the ocean was so peaceful. So this is what we have to do, right? As the world starts to get more and more chaotic, is to go deep, deep within yourself. And this is the best way to help the world, is when you start emanating from that space, right? It completely shifts the frequency on the planet, right? And all your community and your environment. It's the best thing you can do for the planet. So calm and peace we want. Yeah. So Phantom says, strange week as well, right? Bad sleep, lots of past memories from childhood. Yeah. Yeah. So what I say now, Phantom, is just about feeling. If you've got past memories, don't get the mind and the ego in there, and I've got to work all this out, and I've got to get the proof and all the receipts and who did what, and right? It's like, go to the emotions. That's all that wants to move. So you just feel it. You just feel what comes up for you without interfering, right? And then this is how you process it. This is the Phoenix work. Yeah. Nothing bad. Yeah, just weird stuff. Right. Yeah. Because sometimes I'll notice too, it's like, why am I thinking about this? This memory is so mundane, but clearly it had to be cleared, right? So I just let it go, right? I don't pathologize it or make up a big story about it. Wicked Snails here, 6th line. And Jen Goodwin's been acting up lately. Difficult couple weeks. Yeah, it's very intense, this eclipse energy. Downloads, awesome. Yeah, downloads are there too. Yeah. Jen Goodwin, that's right. Let me see if we got here. So Jen Goodwin's asking about the sixth gate here. It's not activated, right? So there's the solar plexus. If you can see my crosshair there, that's the solar plexus. That's our emotions, right? So the 6 right there is conflict. It's the shadow of conflict. It's the gift of diplomacy, and it's the city of peace. Peace. So you notice this is going through a huge mutation, this whole channel, right? Because the 59 is connected to the 55, right? So if these two are activated, they would make a channel like 63, right? They activate, make a channel. Well, they're mutating, and this is how we bond, right? 59.6 is the channel of mate. It's called the channel of mating. It's how we bond. This is why our relationships are going to be changing. We're already seeing it in the world, how we relate to one another. We're not going to be relating to one another with, we've got to procreate, right? That biological desire, right? Sex, right? We're not going to be coming together for those reasons anymore. It's going to be different, right? We're going to see the fertility. We're already seeing the fertility issues coming, but that's all part of the plan. So this is what I say to people. Remember, there's a divine plan at work, There's a divine plan at work, and it's all about our evolution. Okay. Yes, Tara. Work on those questions, right, that I have here. I'm just going to bring them up again so people can see them, right? And it's all about your thinking, right? Your mind is limiting you. Pluto wants to show you that, how much your mind is limiting you with this Five of Swords. Also, the belief that you have to compete with other people, right? We've been conditioned to believe that. It's a dog-eat-dog world, and I got to be at the top of the heap, right? I got to climb my way up to the top of the heap to get my crumb, to get my little piece of the pie. It's letting go of all of this. It's about cooperation. The age of Aquarius is about cooperation. It's not about competition, right? So it's about digging these up. Little mind games you play with yourself. That's a good question, Claire. Claire's asking about the jab. All I know for sure, and I don't know for certain, so take this with a grain of salt, but my intuition really tells me that it tampers with your spiritual connection, right? But again, we can't even give our power over to that. Like that, even the divine can reverse that, right? Yeah. And we have to remember, too, that everybody is in God's hands, and souls are choosing. Like I said in that last video, right? The two earths. Remember the image of the two earths? There's a division happening, and we're making our choice because all those fence sitters that have been sitting on the fence forever. I'm just spiritual when life gets tough. I'm just spiritual when I'm suffering, right? Or something bad happens in my life. I'm faced with death or something, and then I'm spiritual for that week or that month, and then I go back and I sit on the fence, right? You know, the fence sitters, they're not really committed 100% to their spiritual journey. They're kind of half-hearted, maybe 20%, 30%. It's the suffering that brings them to the spiritual journey. Well, they're being forced to make a choice. We all are, right? But those fence sitters have to choose. Which side are they going to choose fear? Or are they going to choose love, right? Are they going to choose that ego as their master? Or are they going to choose the divine as their master? So that's my sense. Maybe you guys could comment too what you've been any downloads you've been getting around the jab people. And they could just be on the canoe ride, right? We're all going to the same place. Some are taking the canoe, some are taking the train, some are taking the plane, and then the rocket ship, right? Yes, that could be limiting too. Joy says, or believing that you're not deserving at all, right? That's ego too. Remember, there's two versions of the ego. There's the inflated, prideful, boasting, that ego. But then there's the deflated ego, and it's like, I'm not worthy. But it can be disguised as humility. Just like the overinflated ego can be disguised as, oh, that person's so confident. And it's like, no, they have an overinflated ego. And the deflated ego can be, oh, I'm so humble. I'm not worthy of anything. Just let me lie in this, bed of nails, and yeah, I don't deserve any kind of prosperity at all. So Joy says, I'm worthy of love and material prosperity and all of my power back to me. Waheguru. Okay, and then Chanel, Lana. So funny. So Lana says, I also tend to break glass when I'm shipped. Like, it happened 3 times to me this week, which is so odd. And then plus there were like little shards of glass, so I had like a bloody foot, right, from trying to clean it up because I didn't want my dog walking on it either. And then the bloody fingers, and it was so Christian. I know it was like a past life memory because it was so bizarre. I never do. So it's breaking illusions, Lana. Shifting, so she says, so funny, I also tend to break glass when I'm shifting energy and major changes, rumbling. I broke a glass last week and been spilling things. Yep. Okay, so we got validation there. Okay. Yes, and dreams. Darlene's coming in the dream world too. Right? So watch your dreams. I always have a dream journal with me, right, on the side of my bed. And I find that's more accurate, my dream journal, than my actual journal, you know? And I'll look back and I'll read back. I've had one since 2001. And I'll go back and I'll read it. And it's like so accurate, right? It's so accurate what I was doing. Because it works in archetype, right? The right side of your brain. Clear. So a twin flame that's jabbed, can you still produce eternal children? You mean if one is jabbed and the other one isn't? Well, the thing is to remember that we're all this. Everyone is this, right? The whole point of this incarnation is to transcend the ego mind, right? This is all the identities that we believe are us, right? We have a lot of them. We have a village inside of us, but it's all rooted to this ego. So it's not just one ego. It's like can be many, many versions of this ego, right? So we're transcending all of this. And these not self identities, these ego identities can follow us from lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. That's why the pull is so strong, because they're so familiar to us, the qualities of that ego, and it can be found right in the chart, right? Right in the chart. You can see in your human design and astrology chart the flavor of that ego, right? That has to go, that's got to dissolve. The other thing is facing your unconscious fears, transcending the lower self, right, the shadow, and live as your eternal self. And this means no ego, right? No self-image. So a lot of New Age teachings are out there lying to people, right? Saying you need the ego. Who do you think's saying that, right? The ego infiltrating these New Age teachings. The ego wants to live. It wants to survive in a sense. And we have to let it go, right? We have to let it go. It's just going to get more and more painful, right? Because this is dismantling, right? For the Aquarian age, this ego, the ego structure within us. So we need to learn to live in these higher states of awareness. And you may say, well, that's impossible, Michael. I need my ego because I need to know my name and where I live and where my address is. And you don't have to worry about any of this. I notice that even with my own memory. I have people coming up and how are you today? And I know what they want. They want some kind of inventory about what I did last week and what I'm up to. Like their ego trying to connect to my ego. And I'm just honest now. I'm like, I don't know. I don't remember. All I can say for sure and certain is that I'm doing great right now in this present moment. But I'm surrounded by people that kind of get that. They know me, right? They know that about me. And if I need to remember something, it just comes to me, right? So it's about trusting that. You don't need to rely on this mind and ego to survive. So we have to get used to this. So imagine like when you get up in the middle of the night and you've got to go pee, right? You've got to go to the bathroom. You're not really in your, oh, my name is this and this is my life and this is what I do and this is my role in life. No, you get up and you pee and you go back to bed, right? Do you see? Like that would be an example of that. You can function just fine without this ego. So don't be afraid of that and don't be listening to this ego like you need me. You'll go crazy. You'll go insane. These are all the old memories being burped up, right? The indigestion being burped up. I don't know why I got on that thing here. Yeah. Oh, I know why I did. So live as your higher self, right? We have to start getting used to this. And this is living in the present moment, the eternal now. And the ego can't live there, right? This isn't the climate there. The ego cannot live in that climate, right? Of the higher self, the eternal self. Because the ego is part of time. Right, past and future. That's where the ego lives, right? Not in the eternal, not in the climate of the eternal self. Okay. Okay. So that's what my answer to your question, Claire, is yes, of course, right? Of course. And not to even give our power over to the jab and science. And it's really interesting too, because you look at Pluto and Aquarius, you go back to, of course, the American Revolution, the French Revolution, the 1700s. But if you go back even further back, it's the early 1500s, and that was the Protestant Reformation. And that's when the same Neptune was in Pisces, Pluto was in Aquarius, going back to 29-degree Capricorn, because in June, Pluto's going back in Capricorn, and then it will go back into Aquarius in 2024. Same planetary positions in the early 1500s. And that's when the church was losing its control and losing its power. This is when Martin Luther came out and he actually transcribed the Bible. The Bible was only in Latin, right? And who were the only people who knew Latin? Were the priests and the elites, right? The elites, right? So he transcribed that so the common people could read it. This is when the printing press came out, right? So it's a similar thing. Like the church was so entrenched back in the early 1500s, right? And it was losing its power. Pluto's about power, right? Losing its power over the world. It was very, very powerful. So of course now it's like, no, the church doesn't have that kind of power, but science does. Science does. So that's what I see that we're going to start to see that in there. You even look at some of the terms they use. People are losing their faith in science, right? Like science has become a religion, and science is not a religion at all, right? So it's about this, like bringing back, talk about power. It's bringing our power back to our own health and our own vitality, health of the planet, health of your body, right? So we're going to see that. That's what I see with this time around, right? Because these power structures have to go, right? With the Protestant Reformation and the church losing their power, that's when we swung the pendulum over to science, right? Became more scientific and left religion, left God in a sense. And now we're swinging back, right? We're coming back into balance. So what I see too is spirituality and science coming together, right? Coming together. The right and the left brain coming together, male and female coming together. Yeah. Oh my God. I'm looking at a Kim, right angle cross of the sleeping phoenix. You're right in it. You're totally in that energy. My natal Pluto and Uranus are conjunct. Oh, you're one of those. You're born in the 60s probably, eh? With the Pluto-Uranus conjunction. Smack dab in the middle of yeah, you're here for big reasons. The people born in the 60s, what I tell them is they're usually late bloomers, the people born in the 60s, because they were born in that, like, right? Like, look at what was going on in the 60s, major revolution, right? They say that the 60s was the inhale of the Aquarian age, and now we're in the exhale. It's like we're expressing it. We're to express it now individually through each one of us. So with the people born in the 60s, like, I missed the boat, right? It's not, right? I missed the boat. I'm not, right? What I tell them is like, no, you're a late bloomer. This is your time now, right? You're embedded, you're encoded with that energy. And then right in gate 47, and that's the shadow of oppression, right? It's up here. It's off the mind. That's oppression. But it's the gift of, or the city of transfiguration. It's very powerful and it's very karmic, right? So you're doing a lot of ancestral, Kim, you're doing a lot of ancestral karmic work for your family. And conjunct Mars and the 17, Saturn 22. Awesome. Okay. Okay, so that's what I got for today. And so it looks like Wednesdays, if you guys can tune in on Wednesdays for my live stream. And just a reminder too that I've got a couple openings still for my group coaching. That's group guidance is what I call it, but it's group coaching so people understand it. And so this is where I go into the identities. I'm going to go work with people. I'm limiting it to a certain number of people so that I can work with them as in a little group every Sunday. And then I work with your chart, right? So you get individual one-on-one, and then we work as a group. So we have the group consciousness, but looking at these identities, right? Because this is the problem right here. If I were to eliminate or identify a problem on the planet, it's this, it's the ego. Ego comes with all your problems. All the problems can be in one basket, and it's called the ego, right? It's the identity. So it's working with those specific identities that are in your chart so that you can let them go. And when you let that go, right, then all the problems drop. All those problems drop. And I've done it with my own chart and other people that I've worked with and studied and observed. And it's really amazing, right? Because the ego can be like kind of general, can be a general thing. Well, you got to know what the fears are. You got to know what the identity is. You need to know what the past life is, right? All of these patterns are repeating themselves over and over and over again and keeping you on the karmic wheel, which is like you're back in a physical body to work this out, right? Because the purpose here is to realize that you're this, right? This eternal self, right? So keep that in mind if you're called. Just go to my website, neutrinoastrology.com, or go into the information box below. And I've got a payment plan too. Anyway, it starts Sunday. So if you're called to do it, get a move on. Okay? So, and also if you're not on my newsletter, check that out. So what I usually do is I add more. Like I do the announcement of this video, and then I add more in a blog around this subject. Okay, so have a great day, evening, wherever you are in the world, and just stay grounded and let whatever process you're in, trust your process. Keep giving it to the divine, not listening to the ego, not going into fear. Right? Not going into fear. So interfere. You don't want to interfere. Go into fear. Okay? So Sat Nam Aloha, everybody. Bye-bye.